Secretary Alex Acosta, thanks for joining us at the Daily Signal. You're speaking to millennials today about the entrepreneurial economy. What is your advice for young people or all Americans as they enter the workforce?
You know, we have seen so many changes over the past 10 years. And one of the most exciting is really an increase in options for all Americans because of this entrepreneurial economy. As individuals are looking to take full advantage of all the options out there because of technology, focus on skills. Focus on getting those skills that are being demanded by the modern workplace.
Now, job numbers have come in much higher than predicted, particularly this last month, and I'm sure that's great news for you. What do you attribute to some of the success that we've seen?
You know, the job numbers are incredible. We're at a 17-year low on unemployment, and just yesterday, the Federal Reserve predicted that this year the unemployment rate is going to fall below 4%. And that is unheard of. And so here's what we're seeing. We're seeing tax cuts that are creating great opportunities. Americans are getting tax bonuses by the hundreds of thousands. Companies are reinvesting in America, and as they reinvest, they hire more people. For every new piece of equipment, for every new forklift, you need a forklift driver. And so people are getting jobs. And we're also seeing deregulation that's really unleashing the economic might of America. And that's what we need. That's wonderful.
What comes next? How do you sustain that momentum?
Well, what comes next is let's make sure that those tax cuts continue, that we continue to support the American economy and the American worker. The American workers elected President Trump because President Trump said, I will look after you. And that's what he's doing and needs to continue to do.
One of the items that we focus on a lot at the Daily Signal are telling stories, putting a human face on some of the policy issues, and occupational licensing is one of those issues where a hair braider in Tennessee can't get a job because of regulations. How are you tackling this as Labor Secretary?
You know, this is all. It's such an awful issue. There was a time in America when only about 1 in 20 Americans needed a license to work. Now nearly 1 in 3 Americans need a license just to work, to make a living. It is wrong. Across the nation, more than 1,000 occupations now require licenses. And so we're working with the states because this is a state issue and we need to recognize it's a state issue. But we're working with the states so that the states can have reciprocity with each other. They can recognize each other's licenses. If licenses are necessary, eliminate them. If they're needed for health and safety, then recognize other states' licenses. And I'll tell you where this is most unfair. Our military families, military men and women serve the nation. And they move every 2 to 3 years from base to base. And their spouse has a really tough issue. Do we protect the integrity of the family and move as family, or do we keep a job? Because when a spouse moves with his or her other spouse that's serving the military, the new state doesn't recognize the license of the non-military spouse. And that's just wrong.
And finally, I want to ask you, jobs in the economy are a big focus of President Trump's. What's it like as the Labor Secretary to work with him on this #1 issue?
Well, you know, there's great clarity. It's jobs, and even more jobs. And, you know, President Trump is so laser focused on looking after the American worker and creating jobs and putting the American worker first. And you see that whether it's in his trade policy or his tax policy or his labor policy. And so you know exactly what he wants.
Secretary Acosta, thanks for joining the Daily Signal.
Thank you very much.